All right, we're going to go and get started. Thank you again for everyone who's joined today. This is all about pro tips today. So we're going to show off some new functionality. We've got a great customer panelist that's going to be joining us to share some strategies around some of the functionality that we'll be talking about with Tag IO and related content, just kind of overall, just, ways that they've structured Avail and strategized organizing their libraries and kind of what decision making goes into that. So we're very excited to have them share their story. Before we get started, I did want to make a mention of, and kind of send out a happy Earth Day to everyone. So you may or may not know, Avail is part of a program with the Arbor Day Foundation, and to date, we've actually planted, 7,300 trees in Eastern Kentucky, white oak trees. And we continue to kind of support that sustainability initiative, just being a part of the AAC industry. It's an important piece of kind of who we are as a company. So I wanted to kind of send that out to everyone. Happy Earth Day. All right, so for the agenda for today, so I'm going to be covering some core principles and terminology, right? We're going to be talking about some different features, some different kind of key terms around Avail and using Avail. So I'm going to highlight those things, talk about some nuances between different tools and kind of what we're going to be focusing on today. And then I'm going to turn it over to Randall Stevens, our CEO. He's going to actually kind of walk us through and demo some of that functionality and some new feature and kind of functionality that's been built in some existing tools. And then we're going to turn it over to kind of wrap things up with our customer spotlight for Moody Nolan. So I've got Nick Bauer and Nicole Powers on again to kind of talk about their success with Avail, strategies that they've implemented at the firm, rolling out Avail, and then kind of how they're using some of these same features in the platform to kind of take their content management to the next level. So very excited there. We will have some time at the very end of the webinar for Q&A. So feel free to post those, throughout, and then we'll kind of come back around and focus on those questions to kind of wrap up things at the end. So if you don't know me, if you haven't seen me before on a webinar, my name is Clay Watson. I'm the Director of Customer Success at Avail. Rob Snyder is joining us as well, our Customer Success Manager. And then I mentioned just previously, Randall Stevens will be joining today, our CEO and founder. So to get things started, talking about Avail. So we are a content management platform. We are built on kind of two core principles that we are file type agnostic and file location agnostic. So that means that we are a platform that can host a variety of project information, wherever it lives. You can have plenty of Revit content. You can have PDFs. You can index URLs, which we'll be touching on today. And you can interface and connect all of this project information into a single source of truth, one single platform. The content location agnostic principle is that we're kind of sitting on top of your current storage location, whether that's an Ignite storage location, whether that's a local drive storage location. Avail sits on top, gives you a very powerful search experience and also a very nice visual navigation experience. So what I have here on this slide is one of the components to create that visual experience. And this is showcasing Moody Nolan's channel cards to kind of give them a little bit more of a spotlight on kind of how they've managed their first kind of homepage of Avail. So this is a way that they've grouped their content. This is the first interface. So when their users go to Avail, they're going to their channels that have been shared with them, and that's kind of where they start that experience, searching across channels or clicking in and actually, seeing the content within those channels. Another component around that visual interface that Avail supports is your option of creating key cards. And key cards are just filters to the content. It's another way that you can group the content. It's all based on how content is being tagged, which kind of improves the searchability overall. But again, these are highly customizable. Again, this is another showcase of Moody Nolan's key cards and what they've kind of done with their kind of division segmentation on how they're grouping this content, but also kind of putting together this visual interface to make it really kind of nice and easy, kind of a choose your own adventure. Once you kind of get into a channel, you can jump right into a filtered set of content, and then kind of find that information as fast as needed. Some other things that we're going to be talking about today are some additional tools around managing the content and your libraries within those channels. So channels are your big groupings, your libraries of content. You've got different ways to organize those within key cards and your ability to tag that content. And there's specific tools that are built into channels to help you manage all of that metadata. So we've got two different tools that our publishers will use, kind of our admins will use, and one of those is going to be highlighted and actually demoed today, and that's around Tag.io. So you can kind of think of these things as ways that you can kind of make bulk changes across an entire channel for your tags and metadata. So this is a way that you actually export all of your metadata for content, make some changes, and apply that across the entire channel. So it's a tool for your admins and your publishers to be able to kind of mass update content. Again, improving searchability, cleaning up the look and feel of the channel, and just kind of creating a better experience overall for users. Tag import is another tool that's kind of in tandem with Tag.io, but used in a different context. And so this is really kind of being able to copy tags across channels. So not just managing things within the channel, but maybe carrying over the same tag structure from one channel to the next. Here's an example. This is kind of where you would access your channel tools, whether it's Tag.io or Tag Import. Again, we're going to be demoing this and kind of opening it up and showing you what that export looks like, opening up in a spreadsheet, making those changes and how it gets applied to the content within a channel. We're also going to be demoing some of related content. So the story behind related content is really kind of going back to being able to connect project information and essential information that may need to go along with different pieces of content. So you can think about it in a few different ways. We've got some examples listed here, connecting a sheet and a drafting view that's on that sheet. There's ways that you can connect, manufacturer content like PDFs and things that go along with specific families. Or even a web page, a manufacturer's web page or URL that is important to reference, as you're interacting with the content. Some of this we've actually built into our harvest functionality. So specifically with sheets and drafting views and legends and schedules, we've automated this as just a natural output of harvesting. So if you're taking a container file and you're extracting the elements, we can actually create these relationships for you. And what this does, it just kind of it creates a nice little grouping, a nice little bundle of essential information within AVAIL, so that you don't have to kind of jump around to different areas. You can see a sheet, you can open it up, and then you can actually see the drafting views and legends and schedules that are on that sheet. So I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like in the AVAIL desktop. So as you see here, we've got some families, some casework families with specific related content icons that'll appear here. You can click that open. It's going to open up this related content panel where you can visualize the different things that have been attached to that family. So down here, you've seen this product catalog has been attached to this family and can be easily accessed and opened up and actually visualized within the desktop. This is an example of an even better view. So you can actually click on the content name in the desktop and open up a content view window. And so this is kind of a side-by-side of clicking on that sheet, opening it up, and actually seeing the drafting views and be able to kind of open these high-res previews of this content and seeing it side by side, right? So you're looking at a sheet, but you're seeing all these views side by side. Again, essential information that's getting pulled together with related content. All right, so that's kind of the overview, thinking about channels, key cards. These are things that Moody Nolan's going to talk about a little bit more, and then now we're going to kind of dive into using Tag.io, what that looks like. Now we've kind of connected it with related content, which is a brand new functionality. So with that export, you can now include related content categories and make relationships by importing that data into a channel. So we're going to walk through that, and there's some additional kind of URL components that are pretty cool that I'll turn it over to Randall to kind of showcase what that looks like. Take it away, Randall.
Thanks, Clay. Looks like you've got to give me permission to share.
Yeah, let me stop sharing on my side.
All right.
There we go.
All right. Thanks, Thanks, Clay, and thanks for teeing all that up. I'm gonna, I like to not use slides. I like to actually demo the actual product. So nothing like going live. Some of the functionality I'm going to show you is actually rolled out a couple of months ago, but if you haven't gotten around to discovering it or using it, I'm going to give you a couple of pointers and shortcuts. But I've just got my Avail desktop running, and what Clay was walking through. I'm just going to go into a channel with some Revit content and show you a couple of examples of the related content feature, just so you understand what that is, and then we'll talk about ways to make these relationships, which is what I'm going to kind of focus the time on. You can see in this interface, there's a little icon when there is related content to an item. We'll render a little icon there, which lets you know that. And what Clay was saying was if you click on that, we'll actually open up this right-hand panel for that item and show you the individual items. But you can also just click on if you click on the name of a file, it opens up on any file that opens up what we call the content view, which there's the original item, which was in this case a piece of casework in Revit, but you can see there can be relationships to other things, product catalogs. What opening up this view gives you is the full preview window. So now all of a sudden it's like, okay, I can see a detail that might have been related to it or a PDF that might have been related to it. So you can make relationships to anything that you want inside of this interface. You'll notice I have editing privileges for this channel, which means that I'll see this little pencil icon when I open this up, but there is actually a kind of work in place editor. So if I were to go open up, let's just say I wanted to make this other piece of content related to this one for some reason, all you have to do is drag it over on there. And that's as easy as it is to make a relationship between anything that you can put in Avail. You can make relationships between those. So and then you can create categories. So you can see that we end up categorizing or grouping things. Completely up to you. You can make up your own categories, the way that you want to think about or speak to these kinds of objects or groupings. But if I were to, let's just say relating other families, so I can put that in the family category, click that it's done, and now I have families and I've got that other family file or maybe a group that was some groupings with some of that content. So anything in Avail, anything that you can put in Avail, you can make relationships. So everybody always thinks about their technical content like the Revit families or those drafting views that might want to go, which are a natural way to think about that. But because you can index anything, that means including URLs, that means you can make relationships to things that are in your SharePoint system or things that are over on ACC. Anything that you can put your hands on, you can usually index that in Avail, which means now you can make these relationships between the two. So I'm going to show you, we introduced this related content feature 2 years ago, probably now. And one of the first places, ultimately the challenge becomes the labor involved with making those relationships. So we're always looking for where can we either automate those relationships, or what I'll be showing you, especially around URLs, way easier to do this in a spreadsheet than to try to do it through these interfaces. So I'm going to show you some tools that we just have integrated for doing that. But before I do that, let me just show you with our harvest tool, we took advantage of that related content feature. So you can see here, like harvesting an entire sheet has related content. If I open up that content window, there's the full sheet, but we automatically created the relationship to the individual drafting views that were on that sheet so that those can be accessed directly as well through this interface. So that's an example of us looking for a natural automated way to do this through some of our tools and processes, is to automatically do that. We do that also with drafting views themselves. Let's see if I've got any examples. So with a drafting view itself, we will make a relationship or give you the option of a relationship to the individual detail items that were used to make up that detail in this example in Revit. So that's just an example of related content. Obviously, it's pretty easy to start to kind of dream up these connections between information and data. I think the the obvious first step are things like this where you're wanting kind of technical information. But when we first put this out, I'd say we first saw people thinking about their standard operating procedure documents and other kinds of reference materials that they wanted to bring in and get closer to their technical library and technical content. So that's where we started seeing some of the first use cases of people actually implementing this capability. So we're always looking, and ears are open to what kinds of relationships people want to make between these things, and we'll try to help build better tools or to try to make that easier to build and maintain. But what I'm going to do a couple of things today. I'm going to start by I've created a new channel here called Related Content Pro Tips. So it's just a blank channel. So the first thing is I want to make sure that everybody understands, because I'm always surprised we get on calls sometimes and somebody didn't even know you could do this, right? And it's like it's been around forever in Avail. So the first thing is I've just opened up a web browser, and I've already kind of opened up several web pages or references to PDFs or things that are online. And actually, here's today's presentation that Clay was giving today that's sitting here in our Google Drive. But just so everybody understands, you can index any URL into Avail. So I'm just going to start with this one. So I'm in a Google Chrome, right in this in the navigation window on the far left usually is where you have to grab these things. But if I grab that URL and drag it onto Avail and let go, it's going to drive through the exact same indexing flow that we do for getting content off your network or wherever you're doing. So I'm just going to say skip all these steps. I get my little update window down here, and in a couple of seconds, this will index, and you'll get my refresh button. And here that is. So that's now indexed in there. One of the challenges, and I'll show you a couple of tricks here now. One of the challenges is when we index this, the question is, what graphic do you get? We try to intelligently grab off that web page. Buried in the header is usually like a default image or something. So that's what you're seeing here. So that's getting pulled in to use as the default graphic. But if I select this and open up my preview window now in Avail, you can see that it's rendering that URL in real time. If I wanted this image for this to not be just that little horse icon, but actually look more like this page, new feature that got released recently. If you look up on when you are rendering a URL, there's a little camera icon up at the top. What that means is anything that I'm viewing in this window, I can just click this and it's going to capture that image and automatically watch. It's going to update that URL over there, that image for that URL. So this is especially important if you are indexing URLs that are on your intranet. So you can imagine we can't touch anything on your SharePoint to automatically get a thumbnail, but this lets you index it. Just open it up here, one button click, you can get a much better thumbnail image to make these look better in your Avail interface. So that's the first thing, that little camera icon. It's been up there a few months now, but I forget which release that we put that in there, but it was all part of trying to get better graphics faster on these URLs. And then here I can click on that, open that up in that content window. If I wanted to go back to my library item and put that on a piece of that casework like I was doing earlier, I could open up that piece of casework and I could drag that URL over on, I can get this into this piece of content and make that connection between those two that easily. So I'll go ahead and say that this is, I'll just put it under documents. So now I've added that. And now related to this piece of content is this little document that went with it, right? And you'll notice that they don't have to be in the same channel. So that can be in another channel. And in fact, another pro tip, that other channel does not have to be shared with everyone. They don't have to see that channel for this relationship to pass through to the content you've related it to. Because a lot of times there may be these relationships and you don't want that to be its own channel and searching it, but you want think of it as like a holding area for that content that you're now going to make relationships to other content. All right. I can see Nicole shaking her head. So she's the pro at this. I can tell she's been doing a bunch of this stuff. So that's the basics of how that works. So now what I'm going to show you is that we actually have gone one step further. And what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to go into this channel where I've got all this Revit content, and I'm going to open up my Tag.io tool. So we have what we call channel tools. If you're an editor to this channel, you should see that icon over on the right. It'll open up this panel. And as Clay outlined, there's two tools in here right now. We've actually got some new stuff coming, but Tag.io and Tag Import. Tag.io is dump the data out of this channel into a spreadsheet, let me munge it, and let me re-import that data right back. Tag Import, Clay was mentioning you can basically borrow data from another channel, but you could also import from a spreadsheet in Tag Import. So I can not only get from another channel, I could also upload, and instead of we would match based on file name. So I'll give you a quick example of that here in a second. But let's start with Tag.io. Tag.io, you download this data to a spreadsheet. If you haven't been in here a while, this updated several months ago. We now give you a lot more granularity about which data you want to shoot out into your spreadsheet. This is everything that's available on this content. And you'll notice we updated to include, if there are related content, we actually will spit that data out into the spreadsheet too. So you can see of the content I have in here, I have all of these different categories of relationships that have been made onto this content. So I am going to I'm going to keep this. Let's just go ahead and download. So I'm going to hit download. It's going to pop up now that I've got this in this spreadsheet. And if I click on that tab delimited file, it's going to open up on my other screen, it looks like. But here, I'll just open it up in Excel. So if you haven't been into Tag.io, this is the actual ID in the AVAIL system, but it's for content in this location by this name. And then the spreadsheet is just all the tags and metadata that have been attached to that. So I can sit in here and edit tags, add tags, remove tags from content. So it's really good for bulk editing. But if you'll notice over here on the right, we will also notice the nomenclature. If you just put a little RC colon in front of a word as a column header, we will treat that like related content. So it's not a tag anymore, it's a relationship. So you can see this exported ones that were already made. If I scroll over here and scroll down, you'll see that there's data in here. So there's URLs. So we support URLs in this spreadsheet. If there was, let's see if I can find any. If there were other pieces of content in Avail, you might see the ID like this for a piece of content. If I wanted to make that a relationship here, I could do that, and that would be a relationship between those two now. So I'm going to concentrate on the URLs today. That one's a little bit trickier, but if you had it, sometimes you'll see where somebody says, look, I've got a standard sheet. And once that sheet is identified by its ID, you could come in this spreadsheet and connect it to dozens of things at the same time just by pasting that relationship. You could also, if I wanted to create something brand new, I could just say RC related content, and I'm going to make the category Randall. And I would now have a Randall category with these, whatever I've put the relationships below. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to concentrate over here. I've already got like PDFs. So let's start with some PDFs. Also have schedules, sheets. Thought I might have some, let me get these all spread out here. Websites, legends, materials, right? Whatever headings you want to call these things. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to, let's just use the documents section. So I'm going to go back over here to where I've got some examples. So here is an example of a PDF, a direct link on the web to a PDF, which is code compliance. I'm just going to take this URL to that PDF document, and I'm going to paste it into that cell. That's all I have to do. So what I'm telling this is this piece of content here. Actually, let's see. Well, I should have done that casework. It'd be more exciting. Let's do that. Take that away from there. I'm going to scroll down to where my casework that I was just dealing with. So here's my cabinets, casework. Well, I thought it was going to be in alphabetical order, but maybe it's not. Let's try this. Sort. I'm going to do this across these bollards just so we can find it easily. So I've got two bollards there, and I'm going to come now and make this relationship between those two. So I'm going to go back to that URL. I'm going to paste that into this cell, which should be it's going to show up under details, but you get the idea. So now I've got that PDF there, and I'm going to take a different URL this time. Let's just go to, I just went and grabbed, just to get you thinking, URLs for manufacturers. It could be, a direct link to, again, a PDF brochure or something that wanted to go in there, but let's just start with this. So now I'm going to make that relationship there. So I've got two different kinds of content. I've got a URL and a direct link to a PDF. Actually, that was a Revit file. Let me go find that PDF. All right. So that's all you have to do is you can go fill this out to your heart's content across your content. I'm just going to hit Control S for save. And then all I have to do back here is upload that spreadsheet again. So this is going to open up to where that file was, and I say open. So it's going to parse through there, and it's the tool is going to find what's changed. So we'll give you a little preview of that. There's some things that are added in green. There's some things that are being removed that I made up. I got rid of some URLs there that were connected, and it's going to create those relationships. An option that you've got when you are having related content is by default, we could put that content in the same channel that the data is going in, but we don't. We give you the option of choosing a different channel. So I'm going to go to this related content testing channel, which is what I was using. No, what did I call that one? Called it related content pro tips. All right. So I'm going to put it's going to build those new pieces of content that I'm telling it I want related. It's actually going to go build those themselves automatically in the pro tips channel. So all I do is choose that and say apply. And now it's going to work. So those two URLs that I added in that column, we are grabbing those. We're basically creating the object in Avail in that channel for each of those. We're automatically going and trying to grab a better thumbnail for that and create that piece of content and make the relationship to the content that you had that in the cell within the spreadsheet. So you can see there, happens pretty quick. If I do a refresh the channel and search for Bollard, which is where I put those. Now you see that there's related content to those. If I open one of these up, there was the details, which is that document that I was just seeing, right? And on this one, don't know what I did there, Reliance. So you get the idea. You make relationships between all of these things. If I go show you in that channel now, you'll see that we created that content. But here's an example, like with that one, if I open up this, maybe that's not the best looking graphic. Maybe this second page was a better representation of that. And I can use this little icon to snapshot that. It updates that thumbnail automatically to pretty that up. And then if I go back to my channel and search for that bollard, we now should see that we've got a better looking thumbnail, right, that was related to it, linked to that page. So is that the greatest thing in the world? Probably not, but I think it's a huge efficiency for quickly thinking about how to build these relationships between things. And, I think if you haven't ever indexed a URL, especially maybe from your intranet, like I said, SharePoint sites and places that you've got other information that might make sense to make these relationships, just go experiment, index one of those, understand how that comes into Avail, and then you can start thinking about where and how that those relationships want to be formed between that content. Was there something else I was supposed to cover, Clay, or was that it?
That was all of it. That was terrific.
He's given me the get off the camera and get on with better stuff. So
No, that was great. I think that highlighted what we wanted to showcase is that, yeah, creating those relationships, and we've heard from customers who've kind of adopted related content that it makes a difference for their end user experience. The more connections they can make with project information, some of that is essential. And users having to go to a bunch of different locations to find that is time consuming. And this is a way that you can, again, bring it all into Avail, make those relationships and connections and just make it a lot easier for your teams.
yeah, just one other quick point about that. That data is staying where it was. There's a single
Right.
source of truth in SharePoint on that city's website, and all you're doing is pulling that conveniently to the user through these relationships, but you're still pointing. We're not downloading that content or doing anything. We're always just pointing back to the single source of truth. So it's pretty powerful when you start to think about that.
All right, fantastic. So we're going to shift gears. We're going to move into our customer spotlight. So again, we brought in Moody Nolan, a longtime Avail customer. I'm going to turn it over to Nick Bauer and Nicole Powers, and they'll kind of talk a little bit about the firm, and then again talk about their story and strategies of Avail, how they've rolled this out, what their pro tips have been, lessons learned. So I'll turn it over to you, Nick. Take it away.
Thanks, Clay. Nicole, share the PowerPoint for a second.
Okay.
Well, thanks again. Really appreciate you guys thinking of us to join this webinar. We love doing stuff like this. We love helping out other firms that may be kind of in similar boats to where we were years ago, because it's not easy to deal with a lot of the change management that comes along with content management systems. And I feel like Avail does an excellent job of guiding through the process, and we're just happy to be a part of that. So I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about who Moody Nolan is, where we are, kind of some of our history with Avail, and then we'll turn it over to Nicole, and she's going to show you some of the cool stuff that she's been working on. So go ahead, Nicole. So I am Nick Bauer. I'm the Director of Design Technology here at Moody Nolan, and with me is Nicole Powers. She's one of our BIM managers at Moody Nolan. She focuses a lot on our content stuff. We have a team that handles everything related with BIM and design technology, digital practice, stuff like that. But one of the things that Nicole's really been focusing on lately is kind of bridging the gap between all of our different practices and stuff. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. So Moody Nolan, we have around 300 total employees, 12 offices and 13 practices, 13 plus practices, I should say. And the context on that is pretty important, mainly because the 12 offices and the staff number around 2020 is what started the conversation with Avail. And then the 13 plus practices and how we deal with multiple project typologies kind of dips into a little bit of what Nicole's going to talk about and trying to get a handle on all of the different content that's related to those types of things. So go ahead, Nicole, next slide. So, this story is probably similar to other firms that may be listening to this. That, March 2020, February 2020, we, one day we were in the office, the next day we sent, 100 and some odd people home, and it stayed that way for a while. And that triggered a lot of changes to be made with how we deal with remote work, how we deal with content, how we deal with learning, how we deal just how to work and tighten up those processes. And as part of that, we reached out to Avail because we knew that there had to be a better way of organizing our content than just the way that it was on our network, because there was no longer that in-person touch point where someone can say, "Hey, where do you have this door? Where's this door? Where do we have this piece of casework? What did you use on that project?" And so that's where Avail came in. And we started implementing that in 2021, and it has progressed since then. We Nicole kind of took hold of a lot of the processes and the behind the scenes stuff, and she's the one that came up with a lot of the key card organizational structure, some of the tag IO stuff to be able to solve some of the challenges that come along with finding specific content. So it's one thing to have it indexed. It's quite another to be able to find it and find exactly what you need the way you need it, and how we organize that. So and to be fair, we had a pretty solid organizational system in place for our content. We years and years ago we had gone through and completely abandoned the out of box Revit content system, and we went with like CSI divisions, and we went through and we renamed all the content to have the specific CSI division that it belongs to as close as we could get it, and mirrored that folder structure. And so from that standpoint, getting the Avail channels indexed was fairly straightforward from an organizational standpoint, and it all became how do we make it better. And so that's where Nicole has been taken with some of the stuff and running with it. So I'll turn it over to her. She's going to talk about a lot of the cool stuff she's been doing.
Hey, thank you, Nick. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit just to that piece. So, we're kind of calling this phase one. This is kind of what Avail looked like at Moody Nolan when we first implemented it. So, kind of as Nick was describing, we just started intentionally with a familiar structure. So, the content stayed in existing folders, just got placed on Avail, and now there's that visual search component. And the content is still named by that CSI division and section kind of organization. So you have that familiarity with finding content for those users that were used to kind of looking through the file folder structure. But now that's been upgraded, right? Because you have that visual search. And we did kind of limit that initial scope on purpose. We wanted to start with the high value, high impact families first, because we were trying to get adoption. We wanted to transition our users over from, okay, this is what you used to do, but this is what we want you to do because it's much better and much faster. And so with that, we focused on kind of three things. That was our Revit content. So, 2020, 2021, 2022 at that point, and then our guideline details, which is just like our approved details for wide use, and then UL fire resistance rating diagrams. And that was really successful, but we did kind of learn some things from that initial setup. We did learn that search, as like the content kept growing, the search kind of became harder, and it was almost like Avail was too good because it was showing you too much at one time. And so our users were asking for like a way to kind of start filtering that content down because they wanted to kind of narrow down the visible results once they opened Avail. And so that kind of prompted us to start thinking about our keycard strategy and how we can kind of improve search through a little bit of structure. And since the CSI organization is already very familiar at this point, and we had also recently gone through Moody Nolan had rebranded right around middle point of 2023. And so we kind of used that to prompt our design of our key cards because we wanted to reinforce kind of that new brand identity. And these key cards were really successful. It's again that visual search, we're leaning on that. And this kind of gives our users like a visual cue of what they would find in each CSI division, while also kind of, again, passively they're like learning that specification organization. And yeah, search got quicker. We're talking about a Revit library that has anywhere from 4 to 5,000 assets, and you open it up and you pick one of these key cards, and you're looking more like, a couple hundred in a grab. So it was a lot faster to find the content that you were looking for, but we still needed like a little bit more beyond just the breaking things up by CSI division. And we kind of just kept asking ourselves, like thinking about this next piece of like, how many different ways can you search for a door in AVAIL? And so that led us into, we'll call it phase 3, adding the next layer to search. And so we kind of had to like change the way we thought about content just a little bit and start thinking about like how we wanted to define content. And so that started to be okay, if you're like looking for a door, kind of like what questions are you like mentally like asking yourself when you're looking for that door? You're probably thinking like, what kind of door is it? How many leaves does that door have? Are there vision lights? What features does it have? And so we tried to kind of build our tagging strategy around that mindset and not go too crazy with it because I feel like you kind of could go into this like infinitely long way of picking up tags. And we established the system that I have kind of broken up here on the right-hand side where you start with the overall category. So we're keeping that CSI organization. And then that next piece, probably the most important piece after that, is like the configuration. So asking the question of like, what is it and what features does it have? And then since we have a variety of project types too, but we have some content that's just more relevant to certain project types than other. So giving ourselves the ability to tag certain project types when it's relevant. And then finally, kind of this like discovery keywords piece where it's like, do we want to flag this content that's Moody Nolan specific, or do we want to flag it as manufacturer? Because we do have some manufacturer content in our library. And then also picking up just any other additional like keywords or any kind of thing that would like improve our search engine and just picking up text search because we want to be able to, capture search for our users in as many ways as possible as we can. And yeah, this is great because it makes search a lot faster and it's really nice. So we've got this tagging strategy and we want to implement it. And again, we're talking about a channel that has like, as I said, roughly 5,000 assets. And as you guys saw, Tag.io lets you add things in bulk. So that's the tool we use. We did the exact process that Randall just shared where you download the spreadsheet and you run through and you add all of your tags. And then once you're done, upload it to Excel, right? And it applies everything. And this was great because it let us do this in one big swift action. And we can push those tags out to other channels because we do have versioned Revit channels for now. And so we have kind of this consistent search now across each of our channels. And what changed for us from that point is now those tags act as filters and we're capturing different search terms that our users might also be using. So we've built that robust like keyword bank basically. So you can do filters and a text search. And so I put together a little demo. I wanted to show you guys kind of what this looks like for us too, once this has all been implemented. And so in this video, what we'll be looking for is a single flush panel door with a side light and transom. And so this is kind of what we already saw kind of a preview of what our channels look like, but I clicked into our 2025 library and then I used the Division 08 tag just to get to the doors and you can see I'm already at like 500 assets. And then I picked this swing door tag, and that's already brought me down to roughly 160 or so results. And you could probably scroll through at this point and find the door that you're looking for, but we have more filters so that you could keep filtering it down until you get down to a selection of like less than 5 of what's relevant to what you're looking for at the time. So that's using the tags to kind of filter that content down. But what about a text search? If I was going to look this up, I would probably type it in as single swing door with side light and transom. And that's what I do in my demo. And you can see it brings back very similar results. It's less than 20. It's very easy to find the door that I was looking for when I started my search. And so that's kind of been our main focus has been just, kind of adding that layer of search with tags, and the key cards and everything kind of working together just to make it easier to find the right piece of content at the right time. And so um, that's, what does Avail look like at Moody Nolan today? It's a very searchable and trusted library. Uh, Users are familiar with search. Content is easy to find, and people also trust the content that's on Avail too. We get fewer, we still get them, but we get fewer, do we have this questions? And now we see those questions kind of turn into more of a, well, if we don't have it, should we have it conversation? And we have a variety of studios, and now our studios have approached us wanting to get their content standardized and added to Avail because they see the value in that if content's on Avail, it's trusted and easy to bring back to their projects and easy to reuse content that's already been developed. And so, yeah, Avail's become a part of our project workflows. I mean, teams start in Avail every time they set up a new project to grab the content that they're going to need. And with that said, I did want to take a just kind of a looking ahead, what we're really excited to the kind of the next phase, I guess you would say, for us with Avail, taking a greater, leveraging the palettes feature. We're really excited for the organization palettes feature that you guys announced, and we're looking into establishing what we're going to call studio starter packs, where we have a housing project. And so now we have this official verified housing palette. It has standard sheets that we've set up, details that you use every time you do a housing project, and you can just load that in directly into a fresh Revit project, and it's going to bring everything that you need. And I really like that because it lets us maintain a nice, clean, and lean Revit template. Doesn't mean we have to add a whole bunch of stuff to our template to get it to work for, 13 different practice types or, however many different studios we end up supporting. But yeah, that's what we're kind of excited for as a looking forward. Avail's been really great. It's definitely become a very integral part of our project workflows. So yeah, that's been Avail at Moody Nolan. Um, Thank you, Avail, for also asking us to be a part of this presentation today, and we can turn it over to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. I mean, that's inspiring stuff. To be honest, I think what you've done there is really kind of balance. Something that we talk about, especially with onboarding new customers, is that you're looking at a platform where you're trying to balance the ease of maintenance and the ease of consumption. And it's a fine balance. It's an important balance because you don't want to overload the system because you're going to have just a bad experience, right? So thinking about these tools and ways that you can connect this information and just make that end user experience the best it can be, I think it changes workflows, I think for the better, right? It's just a positive experience overall. So thank you for sharing that strategy. I think, yeah, you touched on a lot of different features, the tag IO, using palettes, which is, we've kind of moved into organization palettes as well. That's out there now, but yeah, that's a great story. Thank you. All right, we'll turn it over to questions. I don't know if we have, at least we had one. But just a good kind of shout out from AHA. Excellent presentation, great organized channels, well done. So that's awesome to kind of get some of the positive feedback there. But yeah, if you have any questions for Moody Nolan or for Avail, anything around using some of these features, and even how Moody Nolan has kind of implemented this, feel free to chime in. I'm going to share. I've got kind of a wrap up slide that we can talk about. Kind of wait for any other questions that may come in.
I was out.
There was
I was.
one from Ashley
Oh, yeah.
Barnes that came in that I answered
Oh,
already, but I'll
fantastic.
state I can state it here as well.
Yeah.
So the question was for Moody Nolan, do we maintain just one template now and then use palettes for market specific projects? And the short answer is yes. Only one Revit template per version, not per version, per version of Revit. So yeah, that's what we do. I'm very adamant that we don't have various Revit templates per market sector. It would be insane to make a change in one, make one change in the template and have to replicate that 7 times. So our hope is that as palettes evolve, we're able to kind of preload a lot of that stuff in there, so it's easier for our different studios to deal with.
Just one point on that, Nick, is just so that everybody can kind of understand. We would have customers over the years using channels, creating a channel for a market sector.
Yeah.
And we can bulk load into Revit because you could multi-select and we could load. When we began working on this palettes feature, though, one of the features of the palette and the reason that we limit how much content you can put on a palette is now we've built in a one-click load all of this. So these new org palettes, organization palettes, are really, kind of designed for exactly what you are kind of hinting at, which is, hey, here's these market segment areas where there's content, separate it from your template. And now those are literally at the start of a project, one click. And we think eventually we'll even get to where those may be recipes that are just when that project starts, it's autumn. You all can organize your stuff in a palette, but a human may not even have to go do that. We'll just inject it based on the project types and things like that. So we'll continue evolving that, but it is the goal at scale across a firm like this. When you've got multiple building types and teams, content gets complicated, right? It's not just one big monolithic thing. You want it to be like kind of subdivided so that you're only getting what you need.
Cool. I got a couple other questions that came through. One from Tony. If I have, say, 50 pieces of content and I want to add the same related content URL to all of them, can I do that directly in Avail easily, or do I have to use Tag.io? So yeah, I think that's what Randall was kind of demonstrating is, yeah, Tag.io is the best way.
One or two manually, but if you're going to do that across
Yeah.
50, you want to pump that data into the spreadsheet, cut and paste that, load it back in, and let the system go do all that work for you instead of building each one of them. If you have 50 individual URLs, I would still probably go to the spreadsheet and just start pasting them in there, just because it'll go create that piece of content in Avail for you. And then, we're leveraging on the back end, we're actually using a thumbnail service to go get the best thumbnail from that page or website and automatically applying that. So there's just a bunch of kind of nice things that you get through using the Tag.io to do that.
Great. And I think we have a follow-up from Ashley Barnes. Do you start the file for the project team and load the content up front as the BIM team, or leave it to the project team? I think that's for Moody Nolan's side.
We start the project, and being project admins, we start the project in ACC, Forma, whatever it is today. We do that, but we leave the content loading to the project teams, because at any given moment there's like 500 active projects, and we're a team of 3 BIM managers plus me, and we wouldn't even begin to pretend to know all of the relevant content that is needed for that specific project. So we kind of feel that getting a baseline Revit file started and then using some predetermined, pre-approved content per project type is probably the best way to go, because then it's flexible enough that it's not overbearing for the team, both our team and the project team, and it's also not bogging a model down with content that isn't necessary at that moment.
I'll make a comment, Clay. I was demoing this with Revit content, but you can use this on your AutoCAD Civil 3D content. Same concepts apply. All that related content all applies. So we're trying to implement the things that we're doing across all the different applications, content types, and trying to be consistent across all of those. So just want to point that out, because we've got more and more people, especially on the Civil 3D side, using our new Civil 3D implementation.
Yeah. Sure. All right, great. I don't see any other questions, but feel free to post them as we kind of close things out. I think one came through just now. So can you share any insights on user collaboration when trying to gather content for Avail?
Is this one for us, I assume?
Probably,
Yes, I think
but
so. Yeah.
we might have
No,
something to add to it. But go
Yeah.
ahead.
Nicole, do you want to talk about, because Nicole has really started to refine the process of discovery for project typology or project practice and determining what is needed and when it's needed and how we organize it. So I don't know, Nicole, if you want to talk just a few minutes
Sure.
about that.
Yeah. I feel like this actually it kind of started by our housing practice. This whole thing, really, I feel like with the studio specific content kind of started with they came to us with stuff that they wanted our help improving. And that's where it started. I mean, they did reach out to us and we had kind of, also put out the memo that we wanted to start gathering like people's secret stashes because if
Hmm.
it's good content that you're reusing, we want to capture it so everybody can have access to it. But what's been really like successful for us is kind of like picking like one thing that's actionable that you can do and get published to Avail. And when I say by action and do like a piece of content even, like they want to overhaul our residential doors. So I'll use that example. That's one that we've done. And that that's kind of like a package and you work with your studio leads for that studio to do that, improve that package for them. And once that's ready to go, it's been greenlit, you publish it to Avail. And if people want to use the new and good and improved content, they have to get it off of Avail. And so that's kind of where I feel like you set up this dynamic of like, let's get your content that you're reusing that's good, and we'll work together to make sure that it is good and we can fix the things that maybe aren't so good about it, and then we can get it up on Avail for you. And then it's easily accessible for everybody. And I think that kind of like that message is what helps. And so now, we're working with multiple practice groups, kind of doing this same thing where it's like, well, we did this one thing for this group, but like, what does your group need? And what are your pain points and how can we improve them? And this is kind of what that could look like and, what the workflow could look like and just
Hmm.
kind of having that like back and forth conversation with your studio or practice group leaders. That's what we've been doing.
So Clay, and Nicole, maybe you'll be, I don't know if we've given you a preview of this, but we've been working on a new content submission flow to
Yeah.
Avail. So directly, it'll start in Revit, but the ability to collect information from people as they're working on these projects, we're working on that flow, which includes a QA/QC process, right, to bring this stuff back in the libraries. And it's been on the wish list for a long time, and we
Yeah.
finally are getting it integrated. And yeah, I've been able to, I get to use the early stuff, so I've been experimenting now with starting to bring stuff through, and it's like I think everybody will find it to be a welcomed part of a workflow moving forward. And to your point, Nicole, it's like the other piece that's going to follow that is what we call a suggestion engine. So we can automatically try to bring them the content. It's almost like magic. Like before you even ask, we kind of know what you're getting, what you want or need. And we think that is part of this cycle. What would make them give it to me? The fact that they want to get it back through the system. So it's kind of creates this incentive to like, you got to get your good stuff in here, or it's not going to, go through this process and come back to you in the way that you're now addicted, hopefully, to for this to work. So anyway,
Hmm.
that's all coming. It's like coming soon. I quit
Hmm.
giving dates. Start feeling like one of these, I quit giving dates.
Yeah.
But it's in the works. It's what's coming next.
Yeah.
Timeline for Revit 2027. We have do you want to answer that, Claire? You want me to?
Yeah, yeah, either way. I mean, yeah, we've 2027 is coming. We've identified some things that are now that Revit kind of broke from our end with 2027. So we are addressing those things to get out, a new add-in to support that version as soon as possible, right? There's
Yeah.
some things that we have to do on the back end to make sure that communication is functioning and working as expected. So that's all going to be coming, as quickly as possible, but there's still a little bit of work to be done.
Yeah, there was a we use the way our desktop communicates to the plugin was broken because Autodesk made some changes in this release cycle that broke that communication. So we're having to rewire our communication pipe between those things. Maybe too much information, but that's what's going on. We could have tried to put out a quick release patch for that, because we try to be ready on day one when like
Yeah.
27 was released. Because we've got this new stuff rolling out relatively soon, we said, let's just pause and get this all rolled into this next release cycle. And, if somebody's got a really imminent reason to need to run 27, besides just wanting to, I won't say play and check on it to make sure it's working, but if you've got a project that's, really knocking the door down that needs that, then just let Clay and the team know and we'll try to figure something out. But that's what's going
Yeah.
on. And that's why it's a little bit delayed.
Yep. That's
But
right.
we'll get it fixed here and hopefully next month. Yeah.
Yep. All right, good. Last kind of closing announcements, information. Again, thank you, Moody Nolan, for sharing your story. I think that's just really helpful to kind of get a customer's take, right, on their strategy, the discussions. It's all really, really important. Looking forward, so Confluence Chicago, if you want to meet Nick Bauer and Nicole Powers, they are scheduled to attend Confluence Chicago. This is a professional development event. This is kind of we've expanded this kind of Confluence to 3 different events. We had one just a few weeks ago in Seattle. We'll have one next month in Chicago, and then we host a 3-day event in Lexington in the fall. So look out for that communication. Confluence Chicago is starting to kind of fill up. So let us know if you're interested, and we can get you joining us and having those kind of important industry thought kind of discussions. We got some exciting announcements around speakers coming very soon as well. And also just to kind of, as like a general reminder, stay up to date. Everything that we talked about today and more, we kind of touched on organization palettes. That is available in the latest release. So if you're looking at, trying to implement some of these tools and things, make sure that you're up to date on the desktop, AVAIL for Revit. And then we also have that AutoCAD and Civil 3D add-in. They've all been updated fairly recently. So just be in tune with that. And again, we've got content submission and a lot of exciting updates to Harvest coming very soon. So that'll come out and we'll be sending communication out to let you know once that preview is available. But thank you again for everyone who attended today. Feel free to reach out, as this kind of sits and marinates and you start to think about maybe ways that you're trying to organize Avail, reach out. We're happy to jump on calls and strategize with you. And again, thanks for our guest panelist at Moody Nolan. Appreciate it.